The Vexorian auctioneer's tentacles quivered with barely concealed disgust as it gestured toward Lot 47. "And here we have a relic," it announced, its translator struggling to convey the appropriate level of disdain. "Origin unknown. Age approximately 5349 standard cycles. Reserve price, 10 human currency units." Scattered laughter rippled through the assembled crowd of traders, collectors, and scavengers at the peripheral station auction house. The ship squatted in the corner of the hangar like a forgotten monument, a hulking mass of corroded metal and crystalline structures that pulsed with a faint, irregular luminescence. Most species had long since learned to avoid pre-convergence artifacts. They were temperamental, incompatible with modern systems, and usually cursed with some ancient automated defense protocol that had a nasty habit of vaporizing the curious. Marcus Chen raised his hand. The auctioneer's eye stalks swiveled toward him with surprise. "The human bids 10 units, going once, twice." It paused, clearly expecting someone to save the foolish primate from his mistake. When no one did, its translator emitted a sound approximating a sigh. "Sold." Marcus's fellow mechanics back at the human quarter had called him crazy more than once. At 32, he'd spent half his life keeping humanity's mismatched fleet of second-hand alien vessels running on duct tape, prayer, and an encyclopedic knowledge of xenoengineering that most humans found intimidating. While others saw incompatible technologies, Marcus saw patterns. Where aliens saw insurmountable differences between species' approaches to physics, Marcus saw variations on universal themes. "You bought what?" his business partner Sarah demanded over the comm later that evening. "A ship," Marcus said, running his scanner over the vessel's exterior. The readings made no sense whatsoever, which only excited him more. "Ancient one. I think it's pre-convergence, Marcus. Pre-convergence tech is a death trap. Remember what happened to that Quellan treasure hunter who tried to crack open that old station? They used brute force. I'm going to use finesse." He pressed his palm against the hull. It was surprisingly warm, and he could feel a subtle vibration beneath the surface, almost like a heartbeat. What Marcus didn't tell Sarah was what he'd felt the moment he saw the ship. It wasn't logical, wasn't scientific, but every instinct he possessed had screamed that this vessel was important. Humanity's greatest strength, he'd always believed, wasn't their aggression or their adaptability. It was their inability to leave well enough alone, their compulsive need to understand how things worked. For 3 weeks, Marcus mapped every centimeter of the ship. The Vexorians had been right about one thing. It was old, but they'd been wrong about almost everything else. This wasn't just any pre-convergence vessel. As Marcus traced power conduits and analyzed the crystalline matrix at the ship's core, a stunning realization dawned on him. This was a seed ship. According to galactic legend, the seed ships were myth, vessels created by the mysterious progenitors, the species that had supposedly seeded the galaxy with faster-than-light technology before vanishing millions of years ago. Every spacefaring civilization had progenitor myths, but no one had ever found concrete proof of their existence. The ship's systems were biological-technological hybrids, grown rather than built. And they were dormant, not dead, waiting for the right kind of interaction to wake them. Marcus spent another month learning the ship's language, which wasn't really a language at all, but a complex system of harmonic resonances and quantum entanglements that required both technical knowledge and intuitive understanding. Humans, it turned out, were peculiarly suited to this hybrid approach. Their brains operated on both logical and intuitive levels simultaneously, in ways that purely logical species found baffling, and purely intuitive species found crude. Marcus was neither fully logical nor fully intuitive. He was something in between, and that made all the difference. When the ship finally woke, it did so with a cascade of light that lit up the entire docking bay. Marcus stood in what he'd come to recognize as the command chamber, his hands moving through holographic interfaces that rewrote themselves to match his neural patterns. "Hello," he whispered. The ship's consciousness, ancient, vast and patient, touched his mind gently. It had been waiting, it explained, for a species that could bridge the gap between order and chaos, logic and intuition, science and art. The progenitors had vanished not through catastrophe but through transcendence, leaving their seed ships behind as gifts for species worthy of inheriting their legacy. Humans, barely 200 years into space exploration, and still considered a minor species by galactic standards, had been deemed worthy. The ship's databanks contained technologies that made current galactic civilization look primitive, manufacturing techniques that could reorganize matter at the molecular level, energy systems that tapped into dimensional membranes, medical knowledge that could extend lifespans indefinitely, and most importantly, navigation data for 17 other dormant seed ships scattered across the galaxy. Marcus could have kept it secret, could have sold the technologies piecemeal and become wealthy beyond imagination while remaining anonymous. But that wasn't the human way. Instead, he called a press conference at the Galactic Trade Council headquarters and demonstrated the ship's capabilities in front of representatives from every major species. The demonstration lasted 10 minutes. The political aftershocks lasted decades. Within a year, Marcus Chen had become the de facto leader of humanity's expansion into what the media breathlessly called the new progenitor era. He didn't want the title of emperor. That was something the Zorthian delegation had insisted upon, struggling to understand his role in their rigid hierarchical framework. But he accepted it because it gave humanity a seat at the table. More importantly, it gave him the resources to find the other seed ships. He activated them one by one, each time partnering with a different species: Quellan, Vexorian, HKKT, even the famously isolationist Morphiny. Each seed ship chose a partner species based on its unique cognitive architecture, but Marcus's human seed ship remained the most versatile, able to interface with all the others. Standing in the command chamber 5 years after that $10 auction, Marcus looked out at a galaxy transformed. Humans weren't the dominant species they'd never wanted to be, but they'd become indispensable. The mechanics, the tinkerers, the curious primates who couldn't resist taking things apart to see how they worked. Not bad for $10, Sarah's voice came over the comm. She'd joined him on the ship permanently, helping manage the technological revolution they'd unleashed. Marcus smiled, running his hand along the living metal of the console. The ship hummed contentedly beneath his touch, a 349-year-old vessel that had finally found its purpose. "Best investment I ever made," he said. Outside the viewport, a fleet of mixed-species vessels assembled, humans, aliens, and AIs working together to explore the territories the progenitors had left behind. The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries waiting to be understood, machines waiting to be fixed and problems waiting to be solved, and humanity, the species that had bought its destiny for the price of a sandwich, was exactly where it belonged, right in the middle of everything, taking it all apart to see how it worked.